Bonsoir et bienvenue pour ce nouveau webinaire de la Britannique. Nous allons parler d'un sujet aujourd'hui qui fait le cœur de l'actualité. En dehors du Covid, il y a aussi les négociations actuellement entre l'Union européenne et le Royaume-Uni pour la sortie du Royaume-Uni de l'Union européenne. Ces négociations sont en cours, elles ont repris d'ailleurs justement aujourd'hui, mais surtout elles nous intéressent ici au Maroc, car le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni ont signé, vous le savez, il y a pile un an, c'était le 26 octobre dernier, en 2019, un accord d'association. Quel avenir des relations entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni post-Brexit? C'est la question que nous allons aborder ce soir lors de ce webinaire avec des personnalités importantes. Monsieur l'ambassadeur Salman Martin, Stéphane Orr, le président de la Chambre, Paul Mullard, qui est le conseiller principal en politique du département international pour le développement, et Daniel Katé, qui nous fait le plaisir également d'être avec nous, qui est le consul britannique ici au Maroc. Mais sans plus tarder, je donne la parole à Stéphane Orr, le président de la Britannique, pour débuter ce webinaire. Bonsoir Stéphane Orr.
Bonsoir, merci, and good evening, everyone. This evening we will conduct the webinar in English. So, dear members, dear speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you very much for your participation in this new webinar dedicated this Thursday to the future of post-Brexit bilateral relations between Morocco and the United Kingdom. As you know, our two kingdoms have always been close, and it's therefore logical that the United Kingdom has headed towards Morocco to design a post-Brexit future. As a reminder, annual trade between Morocco and the United Kingdom is more than 18 billion dirhams per year, making the United Kingdom the 7th biggest customer of Morocco. 1 year ago, on October the 26th, 2019, Rabat and London signed an association agreement which will take effect on January the 1st. The Moroccan-UK deal will ensure the continuity of bilateral trade after the United Kingdom leaves the European Union. It restores all of the advantages that the two countries granted each other under the Morocco-EU Association Agreement. Also, it will ensure a smooth transition and open up new opportunities for our two countries. 2 months ago, away from effective Brexit, it seems important for Britannique to take a close analysis of our future relations and to explain the advantages of this agreement and what post-COVID and post-Brexit offer to us in terms of economic and trade relations. To have a more understanding at this subject, eminent speakers are with us this evening. His Excellency Simon Martin, new Ambassador of Her Britannic Majesty in Morocco. Thank you for accepting our invitation as one of your first public debates. The Ambassador will give us a global update about the Brexit and his new vision to promote the exchanges between the two countries. We also thank Mr. Daniel Kat, HM Consul General of the United Kingdom and Director of DIT in Morocco, for being with us this evening. We will see with him what the winning sectors of this association agreement are and whether we can hope soon for a free trade agreement. Finally, thanks to Mr. Paul Millard, Senior Advisor in Trade Policy DFID, MENA region, who will give us more detail about the technical detail of this agreement and what are the changes that will happen next January. This webinar is also yours, so don't hesitate to write to us and post some questions via the platform. So before handing back to Mr. Landry Benoit, journalist and host at Atlantic Radio, I would like to thank our loyal partners, OCP Group, BMC Bank of Africa, Bombardier, British International School, Africa, Maroc Clear, Consumar, Inwi, CIH Bank, SMEIA, RMA, GSK and Wright for their continuous support. Have a great webinar this evening and welcome to everyone. Over to you, Landry.
Merci beaucoup Stéphane. Alors effectivement, nous allons tenter de savoir quelles sont les différentes opportunités à saisir durant les prochaines années avec cet accord d'association qui a été signé entre le Maroc et la Grande-Bretagne, le Royaume-Uni, il y a maintenant de cela un an. Va-t-on aller vers un accord de libre-échange plus poussé dans les prochaines années? Quels sont les secteurs également qui peuvent être développés davantage entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni? C'est de ces questions-là dont nous allons parler ce soir et j'ai le plaisir pour commencer ce webinaire, donner la parole à Monsieur l'ambassadeur du Royaume-Uni, Simon Martin. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, Landry.
Merci beaucoup d'avoir accepté notre invitation. C'est l'une de vos premières interventions en tant qu'ambassadeur. Vous êtes ambassadeur depuis maintenant un peu plus de 2 mois, pratiquement 3 mois. Première question, Simon Martin. On voit que les négociations post-Brexit ont reprise tout récemment, il y a à peine quelques heures. Elles étaient jusque-là sous pression. L'hypothèse d'un no deal était évoquée depuis quelques jours. Est-ce que vous avez confiance dans la conclusion d'un accord entre l'Union européenne et le Royaume-Uni?
So, Mr. Ambassador, post-Brexit negotiations were under pressure. The hypothesis of a no deal was mentioned. Finally, London agreed on Thursday to resume negotiation with the EU. Are you confident about the conclusion of an agreement between Brussels and London? What would happen in case of a no deal?
Thank you very much, Landry. I always appreciate it when you get the easy questions at the beginning. The direct answer is yes, I am confident. I'm confident in the future. I'm afraid I don't have. I think the most important thing is that we've already mentioned, that the negotiations are continuing. There are, of course, always commentaries during such important negotiations, and so there are many people who are speculating as to what the outcome will be. We don't know if there will eventually be an agreement. We, of course, hope so. That is the policy of my government and the hope of the European Union. So we hope that the remaining differences which have been identified and which both sides hope can be bridged will be, and therefore that we will have a relatively seamless continuation of our economic relationship with our European Union partners after the 1st of January. But for the purposes of this seminar, I think perhaps even more important is my confidence in what will follow in terms of trade and investment relationships between the UK and Morocco. And in this, we are already confident. As Stephen touched on, that's a funny noise. As Stephen touched on in his introduction, we concluded, and not at the last minute, as so often happens in such situations, but more than something like a year ago, an association agreement between the UK and Morocco, which has replicated in all important areas the agreement which already exists between the European Union and Morocco, and which UK-Morocco trade and economic relationships already benefited from. But already, in fact, of including this agreement, we have already made it better. So, and I'm glad to say this is not just at the initiative of the British government, it also is a sign of the enthusiasm of our host, the Moroccan government, to see the relations between our two countries developing in a positive and structured way. So, for example, there are, as most will know, a series of quotas that apply to the export of goods to and from Morocco to the European Union under the existing association agreement. So the starting point was to identify the size of those quotas that should apply to UK-Morocco trade according to the relative size of the UK economy to that of the European Union. We then identified areas where, in fact, those quotas might already be reached, and those were automatically raised in order to create the headroom for trade between the UK and Morocco to rise without being suppressed by quotas from the 1st of January. I believe it is the case that none of those quotas are yet being reached, which is a very positive thing because it shows that headroom exists for our trade to increase. Now, whatever I don't need to ask the question whether we will have an agreement on before the 1st of January. I very much hope we will, and I'm confident that we are both working with both sides are working with equal strength of purpose to achieve that. But whatever happens, the agreement that we have concluded between the UK and Morocco means that the terms of our current economic relationship will continue as now, except insofar as we've already improved them, as I've just mentioned. So there will inevitably be some questions and indeed some worries about what happens on day one, week one, even possibly month one, just in terms of the practicalities of physical trade between the UK and Morocco. And I'm delighted to say that when I met His Excellency Mohsin Jazuli, the Deputy, the Minister Delegate for Foreign Affairs yesterday, he encouraged us to start now, not in a week or a month's time. He invited us a group, a committee, so that we could identify the possible obstacles to existing trade, whether or not there is an agreement between the European Union. So rather than waiting to know whether operating Plan A or Plan B, the Moroccan government is keen to identify those areas where we might have some difficulties in the early days of the new arrangements, and try to find out how we can avoid those. That's a sign of just how forward-looking and how convinced the Moroccan government is of the benefit that stands there in front of us. So it is worth just pointing out from a slightly broader perspective that one of the reasons that the British people decided in their referendum vote in 2016 to leave the European Union after more than 40 years, it has to be said, was not because of dissatisfaction with the operation of the single market. The single market is a very successful the UK has huge influence in creating, but it is simply the fact that it is inevitable that in any any economic union like this, there is an element of protectionism that can inhibit trade with third countries. The UK has recognized that there will be impacts on our trade with the European Union, but is determined to find ways of using the new status as an independent trading nation to expand and enlarge to mutual benefit our trade with other countries outside the European Union. Now, as people who have a techie interest in UK international trade relations will know, there are negotiations underway, for example, with the United States, Australia, and New Zealand to pursue a free trade agreement. As Stephen says, free trade agreements are something that we definitely aspire to. But it is fair to say that in the association agreement we already have with Morocco, there are many of the elements of a free trade agreement there already. And our determination is to find ways of working with our Moroccan partners to improve and to vary that agreement to the mutual benefit of both parties. And that's one of the reasons I'm so pleased that this webinar is happening now, and with the prospect of further such interaction with, it's not just a question of the British business community. There really isn't such a thing. What I'm talking about is a community of interested businesses who are involved in one way or another in trade, investment, and other economic exchange between the UK and Morocco. And it is from you that we, British and Moroccan governments, will benefit from the from your experience and the issues that you identify as needing to be resolved and improved as we move forward after the 1st of January. I better stop there, André.
Alors, effectivement, je rappelle juste que pour l'instant, le Royaume-Uni, avec le Maroc, pour l'instant, le Maroc est le premier pays d'Afrique du Nord à avoir signé un accord d'association avec le Royaume-Uni. On voit qu'il y a des opportunités dans le commerce, dans l'investissement, dans le secteur financier, vous l'avez dit, peut-être même sur le continent africain. Vous, concrètement, quelle est votre vision, justement, dans les relations économiques entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni? Quel secteur vous souhaitez peut-être développer lors de votre mandat?
How the Brexit can create a real opportunity between Morocco and the UK, and what is your vision to promote the exchange between the two countries?
Well, there is remarkable complementarity between the economies of the UK and Morocco. I feel that there is much more complementarity than there is competition between sectors in the two countries. And even where we have major actors in the same sector, such as automotive and aircraft manufacturing, we see a great deal of already and mutual advantage being gained from that. But I see opportunities opening up in other sectors. I'm particularly keen to see development in the financial services sector. The Casablanca Finance Center is a dynamic and growing hub finance in this part of the world. Personally, it feels to me as if there is much more that we can do to create really beneficial links with the City of London and the UK's financial sector, which already has such a range of relationships, particularly across Africa, but particularly with the Commonwealth countries of Africa. And this, to my mind, is a great opportunity for us to develop a shared value proposition between the UK and Morocco, given that our complementary traditional links with other African countries. Morocco is a leading light in the renewable energy sector. The UK, like Morocco, is making very, very major strides to transfer to renewable energy. And like Morocco was 4 years ago, is set to be the host of the Conference of Parties, COP26, next year. And it's an area where I see a real strategic opportunity for the UK and Morocco to work together. And even in this sector, I see complementarity rather than competition. We have so much in common in terms of the economics of renewable energy, but in fact, the renewable energy that we develop is very different. You know, the UK is focusing very much on wind, including offshore wind, and increasingly technology. Focus here so far has been solar. I think there are ways in which we can both benefit from each other here, as well as to look at tech sectors such as green hydrogen, but also particularly in slightly less well-known tech sectors, including particularly fintech, financial technology, and edtech, education technology, which are areas where the UK is leading Europe and arguably the world. And this, I believe, together with the extraordinary thirst and hunger for education in the English language, is an area where I would really hope to see a lot of development and a much more evident British presence over the several years that I hope to be here. And when I'm talking about education, and particularly university education, I'm not simply talking about trying to increase the numbers of Moroccan students who study in the UK, welcome though that is, and I'm glad to say those numbers are increasing. What I'm talking about is seeing whether we can deliver British higher education to students in Morocco, which will open this prospect to a much wider cross-section of Moroccan society, and that will be a goal that everybody will benefit from.
Donc on voit effectivement qu'il y a beaucoup de secteurs d'activité qui vous semblent intéressants. Je rappelle qu'il y a eu un accord entre la bourse de Casablanca et la place financière de Londres en 2014, déjà peut-être un accord qui sera appelé à être renforcé dans les prochaines années. Vous avez parlé des fintechs, c'est vrai que Londres est très connu, l'Angleterre est très connue pour ces fintechs, dont certaines sont des pépites en Europe. Peut-être qu'il y a des choses à développer à l'avenir. Les technologies d'éducation également, c'est quelque chose qui vous intéresse en particulier. Et vous avez parlé des énergies renouvelables. C'est vrai qu'on le rappelle, la COP 26 a été annulée cette année, elle aura lieu l'année prochaine en Écosse. Il y aura peut-être des opportunités d'affaires entre le Royaume-Uni et le Maroc. Monsieur l'ambassadeur Simon Martin, quand Christer, le ministre français du Commerce extérieur, était au Maroc. La France a sondé les autorités marocaines sur le plan de relance marocain et les perspectives d'avenir. On y a parlé tourisme, voitures électriques et autonomes, avions à hydrogène. D'ailleurs, il y a Airbus qui se positionne là-dedans. Quelle relation économique post-Covid entre le Royaume-Uni et le Maroc?
France has already checked the Moroccan authorities on its recovery plans in tourism, sustainable city, electric and autonomous cars, the hydrogen plane. What will be the targeted post-COVID economic relationship between UK and Morocco in your view?
Well, thank you for that one as well. I mean, I think it's. I would start by touching on the sectors I've already mentioned in education, renewables, and financial services. I think these are all these are all sectors where, if we get it right, we will see a greater involvement from the UK as making a real impact on the economic development and the economic recovery of Morocco from the terrible COVID pandemic that we are already experiencing. But I think also what the association agreement that we have now negotiated and is about to come into force will give us is a structure within which we can take advantage of the strategic positioning of our two countries in a way that simply hasn't happened before. Arguably, it was possible before, but now what we have, in concluding this association agreement, we have committed ourselves to a much more considered and strategic approach, which includes annual ministerial level consultations covering a variety of areas. And one of those is the potential for growth in trade and investment in an environmentally efficient way with other parts of Africa. And this is where I do see some real benefits coming. We've already seen the British government's former development ministry, which has now been combined with my former ministry. So we now have both foreign and development ministry taking a 5% stake in BMCE, Bank of Africa, which is one of the most important investors in African development and happens also to be one of the largest and most vibrant banks in this country. And that's just one example of a shared interest, which can, under our careful guidance, I believe, lead to a substantial increase in the economic benefit that we both get, and will lead to the UK this post-COVID economic relancement. In the same way that I see that the development of this relationship will also help the UK, because all countries are going to have to relaunch their economies after COVID. Just one example that you might find interesting is that the British government has moved very quickly to offer some technical assistance in an area that we are very familiar with, which is industrial recovery. So industries that are faced with a very serious challenge. It arises from our experience dating back to the 1980s of some very swift structural changes in the industrial landscape of the UK, leading to our needing to find ways to reform and to equip traditional industries for a different future. The textile industry in Morocco has been hit very hard by COVID and needs to be able to prepare itself to get through the next months before it bounces back. We've been offering some of our expertise to the textile sector here in Morocco in order to try to help it be prepared not just to survive, but then to really benefit from the undoubted new opportunities that this sector will face and will hope to be able to take advantage of as the world economy bounces back, but does so in a slightly different way. I think we all know what I'm talking about. And so this is one area where I can point to the concrete British involvement in helping to prepare for the future recovery of the Moroccan economy. You mentioned tourism, and this is another area where I hope, without too much government involvement, we will see Britain playing an increasing role. Had it not been for COVID, we would have expected the number of British visitors to Morocco to increase by something like 20% to over 1 million this year. Obviously, that number is not going to be reached as a result of COVID, but it gives you an idea of the likely contribution that the UK can and will make with investment flowing rather than just tourists. And so I would say that is another area where you will be seeing greater prominence of the UK here. Thanks, André.
Dans quelques instants, on va donner la parole à Daniel Caté, qui est le consul britannique ici au Maroc. Juste avant, je rappelle que ce webinaire, c'est le vôtre. N'hésitez pas à poser vos questions. Il y a déjà des questions. Monsieur l'ambassadeur, je sais que vous devez partir dans pas longtemps. Alors, il y a déjà beaucoup de questions qui vous sont posées. Je vais en prendre peut-être 2 ou 3. Il y a une question qui paraissait intéressante à vous poser sur Gibraltar. Question qui nous vient de Hicham qui nous pose cette question suivante. Ne pensez-vous pas que Gibraltar a historiquement été laissé de côté dans les relations entre le Royaume-Uni et le Maroc, et n'est-il pas temps de changer cela? Y aura-t-il un rôle de Gibraltar, pour Gibraltar, après le Brexit?
So don't you think Gibraltar historically has been left on the side in the UK-Morocco relations? Is it not time to change that? Would there be a role for Gibraltar after Brexit?
Well, thank you for that question. Gibraltar has a unique status. Gibraltar was outside of the United Kingdom, but an overseas territory of the United Kingdom. It was within the European Union, but outside of the single market. So there is no other territory that had that exact status. And of course, therefore, as the UK leaves the European Union, the situation of Gibraltar has required a unique consideration in the discussions. But as you know, I'm sure, Hisham, Gibraltar is a self-governing territory, and the UK looks after its external relations and guarantees its adherence to international conventions, but it has its own elected government, and so the UK will always be taking account of the interests of Gibraltar, but it's and it will always it will always be prominent in the councils of the British government. But as far as a specific role in relations with Morocco are concerned, I think that's for the future.
Alors, on a 2 autres questions. Une question de Sophia qui nous pose la question suivante. Selon vous, quel rôle et quel impact l'Open Sky, l'accord d'Open Skies entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni va avoir dans les prochaines semaines, puisqu'on rappelle qu'après Brexit, le Royaume-Uni sortira de l'Open Skies. Est-ce que vous attendez un impact sur les vols entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni? Surtout qu'ici, on parle beaucoup d'impact du Covid déjà sur le secteur touristique.
So after the Brexit, UK will go out from the Open Sky Agreement. Do you expect any impact in the flights between Morocco and UK?
I sincerely hope not, Sophia. It is one of the areas in which the UK and the European Union have been engaged from an early point, and although nothing in the negotiations between the UK and the EU are finished until they are all finished, this is an area where I believe there is very little difference between the UK and the EU in terms of wanting to maintain the current arrangements and the ease with which the airlines of one European Union state can fly over and into those of another. We have seen an explosion of flights between the UK and Morocco in recent years. And although, of course, there has been until recently a suspension of normal scheduled flights between Morocco and most countries, you'll have seen that in the last 10 days or so, some flights have resumed to Marrakesh and I believe Agadir from the north of England, as a sign that we can expect to see this coming back as soon as the circumstances allow. I am not currently anticipating the outcome of the discussions with the European Union to have any detrimental impact on the ability of airlines to fly between the UK and Morocco. Indeed, we hope very much that this is something that will continue to grow as the demand continues to grow in both directions, not just in terms of tourists from the UK, but in terms of the interest of visitors, students, and business people wanting to travel to and benefit from what the UK has to offer, as well as all of the undoubted benefits that Morocco has to offer to visitors from the UK that anyone who spends any time here cannot help but appreciate.
Une dernière question de Khalid, monsieur l'ambassadeur. Khalid qui nous pose la question suivante. Quelles seront les répercussions politiques sur les relations bilatérales une fois le Brexit opéré?
What are the political repercussions on bilateral relations after Brexit?
Khalid, do you mean the political relations entre between the UK and Morocco, or between?
Yes.
Rather between UK and Morocco.
Yeah. Well, only positive is my very, very firm belief and determination. You see, Morocco is an open, in terms of open-mindedness, and from a trade perspective, a country that believes in open markets and competition. You know, these are two of the most important facets, I believe, that are shared between our two countries. And so no one is suggesting that there is any competition or substitution between the UK and any of Morocco's other partners. This is not a zero-sum game. The UK never thought of it in that way. We simply think that having adopted the position that we have adopted and deciding to leave the European Union, it allows us to offer a slightly different dimension as a partner. Now, the Moroccan government recognizes this, and that's why, as Landry mentioned earlier on, that Morocco was first and has not yet been followed by all its neighbors in terms of concluding a continuation agreement for relations, economic and other relations with the UK. Morocco is seizing this opportunity and wanting to take advantage of it. As I said, this is really, really important, not to the exclusion of other partners and traditional and existing partners, but simply to take an opportunity which is available to Morocco as a country, as a people, and as an economy, to further its own interests. And the great thing is that those interests mirror our own. And so in terms of the political relations, I think they can only go up. And it's certainly not only my hope, but my job to see that they do.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur l'ambassadeur Simon Martin. Alors, restez avec nous. Je sais que vous restez encore avec nous quelques minutes et n'hésitez pas à réagir. On va donner tout de suite la parole à Daniel Katé, qui nous fait le plaisir d'être avec nous, Monsieur le Consul britannique ici au Maroc. Bonsoir, Daniel Katé.
Bonsoir, André. Bonsoir tout le monde. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, on rappelle le niveau des échanges entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni. Hein, c'est un peu plus de 18 milliards de dirhams. Sans doute que ça va évoluer dans les prochaines années. Cet accord d'association, Daniel Katé, il a été signé il y a pratiquement un an. C'était en octobre 2019, fin octobre 2019. C'est quoi déjà un accord d'association pour que tout le monde comprenne bien? Qu'est-ce que ça signifie concrètement?
Okay, the Morocco-UK Association Agreement was concluded a year ago now. It will be in effect as soon as the UK leaves the EU on January 1st. Can you explain to us first what is this association agreement signed between Morocco and UK?
Yeah, thanks very much, Landry, and thanks for that question. Simon's talked a bit about what the association agreement is already, so I'll try not to cover similar ground, but just to say a bit about it. Maybe to start with a bit of wider context, which might be helpful. I'm sure many people are aware of this, but good, I think, to have in mind. And as we know, we need and want our own bilateral agreement with Morocco, because on the 31st of December this year, the EU agreement, which we are part of, will cease to apply to the UK. And whereas up until now we've enjoyed the rights and privileges that exist under the EU-Morocco Association Agreement from the 1st of January next year, this will no longer be the case. So what the UK has tried to do, both in Morocco and with other countries, is to seek continuity of preferential access for UK businesses in all its overseas markets. And that includes access to imports on preferential conditions and access to investment. Because at the end of the day, we absolutely want to see smooth trade and investment flows once we have fully left the European Union. We want to see these flows continue, or at least to the same extent that they did before Brexit. And so what we've done is we've tried to secure this by bilateral agreements with the same countries, and which replicate the provisions underneath the EU trade agreements. And actually, since leaving the EU nearly 2 years ago, we've signed, I think, 20 trade continuity agreements with around 48 different countries, and which has accounted for around or just over 100 billion pounds worth of trade. Now we've got more to go, but I think a positive start, and bringing it back to Morocco. Morocco is one of these agreements, as Simon has said, and it was signed, as you said, Landry, exactly a year ago on Monday. And we refer to it as a continuity agreement because at the moment, what the association agreement does is preserves the preferential conditions for trade between our two countries that we enjoyed under the EU agreement. So that includes a comprehensive free trade area that covers trade in goods, trade in services, including rules of origin. That includes preferential tariffs and quotas on certain items, includes intellectual property, stuff like sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Please don't ask me to explain those things in more detail, but it also includes things like government procurement. So at the moment, one way to think of it is a rollover of the EU agreement. So coming back to your question more directly, that's sort of where we are today with the agreement, and broadly where we hope to be on the 1st of January next year. But the final thing I'd say is that although this will begin as a replication of the EU Association Agreement, we absolutely see the UK-Morocco Association Agreement as the platform for even further enhancing trade between the UK and Morocco, and deepening even further the economic partnership between our two countries. And we'll of course look forward to working with British businesses as we go on that journey. Thanks.
Alors, accord qui préserve le cadre des relations bilatérales, économiques notamment, déjà engagées entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni, et qui va ouvrir de nouvelles perspectives, notamment pour d'autres secteurs. Daniel Katé, que se passe-t-il s'il y a un deal ou s'il y a un no deal entre le Royaume-Uni et l'Union européenne? Est-ce que ça change quelque chose pour cet accord d'association entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni?
So what happens if a deal takes place, and will there be any consequences on this agreement in case of no deal?
Yeah, good question. I'm pleased to say my ambassador has already addressed some of this, so I won't say too much. But as Simon said, the negotiations in Brussels are still very much ongoing. I think, Laundry, as you said earlier, our teams agreed to resume and intensify even talks again in London this week. But as David Frost also said yesterday, David is the UK's chief negotiator. It is still entirely possible that negotiations will not succeed. Of course, we don't want that, but I do think we need to be prepared for that. And also for any impact this could have on the UK-Morocco Association Agreement. And to be honest with everyone, if that is the case, we don't yet have all the answers, but what we can reassure you of is that we're working hard, including as Simon mentioned as well, with our Moroccan partners, to ensure that the UK-Morocco Association Agreement delivers that continuity and certainty for businesses, for consumers, and for investors following the end of the transition period at the end of this year. And finally, and you're noticing me say this a lot today, we really want to hear from businesses and from you on the ground, both in advance, but also once the agreement comes into force in January next year, on the issues and consequences that you're seeing and that you're experiencing. So ultimately, we can work with you and with business to resolve them.
Daniel Caté, quels sont les secteurs gagnants de cet accord d'association entre Maroc et le Royaume-Uni?
What are the winning sectors of this association agreement signed between Morocco and the UK?
All of them, all sectors, I hope, will be winners in this. Just to be brief on this one, I think whilst there will be, for example, quotas and tariffs that exist in specific sectors, the association agreement itself is by no way sector specific, and we really want it to benefit all sectors where the UK and Morocco trade together or want to trade together in the future. And clearly there will be areas where UK companies can add and derive more value than others. And again, Simon mentioned some of those earlier around financial services and renewables, fintech, edtech, etc., and our education partnerships. But at the end of the day, we want this to benefit all companies and in any sector that people want to trade in with Morocco.
Justement, c'est la question que j'allais vous poser, Daniel Caté, c'est quelle opportunité entre les entreprises britanniques et les entreprises marocaines grâce à cet accord, selon vous?
What opportunity for Moroccan companies and British companies within this agreement?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, the great thing about the association agreement is that it provides for high-level government-to-government engagement on economic and trade issues. So I think economic relations between the UK and Morocco, which are already strong, will become even stronger thanks to the entry into force of this agreement. But this is absolutely not just about government-to-government relations. It's about businesses and companies. And I would say we want the real beneficiaries of this agreement to be British companies and British business, and of course their Moroccan counterparts. So we'll be looking to continue to support business dialogues under this agreement, like the one that took place in the margins of the Africa Investment Summit in January this year, which some of you here today may have been involved in. We're looking at things like how to use the institutional structures within this agreement to make more relations between business organizations, for example. So we're keen to enhance the partnership between the CBI in the UK and people like the CGEM here in Morocco. And of course, we'll be doing all we can to support our hosts today and members of BritCham in that. But as I promise to keep saying, if there are things we can be doing more of or in different ways, we, the British government, are really keen to continue to help you and your businesses trade more with Morocco. So please keep talking to us. Please keep letting us know how we can help you and how we can make this association agreement work best for you. And sorry, perhaps one final thing is to say is that this agreement also gives us the mechanisms in which we can seek to address some of the issues that might be hindering trade with Morocco. So whether that be market access barriers or business environment issues, we'll now have a formal mechanism to seek to try and resolve some of those issues. Thanks.
Daniel Katé, alors j'appelle que vous êtes également le directeur du DIT au Maroc, autrement dit le département pour le commerce international. Je voudrais parler de l'Europe qui met en place son Green Deal, autrement dit son projet de neutralité carbone d'ici 2050. L'industrie marocaine est également en marche dans cette voie-là, puisqu'il y a ce nouveau plan industriel et la décarbonation figure comme quatrième pilier. Quelle position du Royaume-Uni sur cette question, Daniel Katé? Est-ce que des coopérations sont à venir dans ce domaine-là?
So Europe is implementing its Green Deal to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. What position of the United Kingdom on this issue? Will be any future cooperation with Moroccan companies?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a really exciting area, I think, and as Simon set out as well. You know, the UK has great aspirations in this area, and we're hosting the COP26 summit in Scotland next year, and really it's great because Morocco has so much expertise to share in this area as well, and particularly in renewable energy, and has shown real global leadership on this. And I think it's also great that Morocco's aim to reach 52% renewable energy by 2030 is matched in its ambition by our own commitment to bring all greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. And I think I'd link this to the recovery from COVID-19 as well, because you know, as the world starts to and continues to recover from the frankly ongoing impact of COVID-19, I think we all have an opportunity to build back better and strive for what we might call a green recovery. And that means sort of creating a fairer, a greener and more resilient, perhaps, global economy. Interestingly, you know, in the last 10 years, the cost of wind power has fallen by nearly 50%, solar power by around 85%, and progress, and this is where it links back to my job here, progress like this was only made possible through countries and companies and financial institutions coming together in partnership and working together. So I'm really pleased that, for example, Morocco's Minister for Energy and our own Minister for Investment, Lord Grimstone, agreed to set up a partnership framework to guide work between the UK and Morocco in this area. Only this week, Lord Goldsmith, who's the UK's Environment Minister, came on a virtual visit to Morocco to see how we could improve cooperation on renewable energy and other areas. And a really important part of our work here in Morocco will be about growing UK-Morocco trade and research links in support of renewables, and that could mean matching UK expertise in green hydrogen, for example, or offshore wind to Moroccan needs and vice versa. And so without a doubt, I think private sector companies will have a really key role to play in all of this. And as I said in previous questions, we'd love to hear from you and work together with you on this. So that's Landry, a long way of saying I very much hope that there'll be an abundance of future cooperation between British and Moroccan companies in this area. Thanks.
Alors, accord d'association, on l'a dit, qui entrera en vigueur dans quelques semaines, le 1er janvier prochain. Un accord de libre-échange, c'est pour quand, Daniel Katé?
And we hope for a free trade agreement between the two countries in the future.
Well, yes, and yes. I mean, look. In many ways, as the ambassador said, we already have one through a free trade agreement through this association agreement, which we've been speaking about today. The agreement, which will come into force on the 1st of January next year, provides for a comprehensive free trade area in the same way that the EU-Morocco Association Agreement did. But what we've also said today is that there will absolutely be scope and desire to improve on this agreement in the future and make it even more suited to the UK and Morocco specifically. And one of the areas we'll be keen to look at is even further liberalisation and free trade. So look, to conclude, to do that, we will want to continue to speak with businesses, work with businesses in Morocco and in the UK, and on what we can do and how we can ultimately make this agreement the best that it can be to serve you and your goals as well. So please continue to work with us and our friends here at the British Chamber. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Daniel Caté. Alors, vous restez avec nous parce qu'il y a beaucoup de questions qui commencent à arriver sur le chat et je vous les poserai juste après les interventions de Paul Mullard et Stéphane Or. Paul Mullard, qui nous fait le plaisir d'être avec nous. Good evening. Alors, je ne sais pas si Paul Mullard nous entend. En tout cas, il y a peut-être un problème de connexion de mon côté. Je ne sais pas si... Paul Mullard, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Paul?
Alors, je pense que le son a été peut-être coupé, ça arrive. Ce sont les aléas du direct. Alors, juste pour présenter Paul Mullard, il est conseiller principal en politique commerciale au sein du département pour le développement international. Et on va voir avec lui comment justement cet accord, notamment cet accord d'association entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni peut protéger les entreprises britanniques au Maroc. Qu'est-ce qui va changer notamment en matière d'inspection et de certification, sans doute des importations et des exportations des produits. On parle beaucoup ici au Maroc d'une politique d'import-substitution. Est-ce que le Maroc peut participer à cet élan justement d'un Made in Maroc, une fabrication d'une marque marocaine conjointe avec des entreprises britanniques? Paul Mullard, est-ce que vous êtes avec nous? Bonsoir.
They're trying to bring you in, Paul.
Good evening. Un plaisir de vous avoir ce soir, Paul Mullard. Alors, c'est vrai qu'on a beaucoup abordé cet accord d'association, mais je voudrais savoir pour vous quels sont les éléments essentiels de cet accord.
Paul, can you activate your sound, please?
Paul Mullard? Alors, on va peut-être retrouver Paul Mullard dans quelques instants. Je vais peut-être donner la parole tout d'abord à Stéphane Or, qui est avec nous. Rebonsoir, Stéphane Or, président de la Britannique.
Bonsoir.
Vous êtes le président de la Britannique, Stéphane Or, mais pas que. Vous êtes également le vice-président Bombardier. Comment percevez-vous cet accord d'association, vous, entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni?
As the president of Britannique and VP of Bombardier, how do you perceive this association agreement between Morocco and UK?
I perceive it obviously as extremely positive. I think the worst thing would have been there was some kind of break in the continuity of trade relations. But what this agreement does is it assures a continuity of basically the same deal that we had through the European Union. So that allows for everybody to keep doing what they were always doing and keep thinking about doing what they want to do. And it assures that continuity of business and flow, which I think is extremely important, especially with the pandemic, as people try to see how are they coming out of it, what are the opportunities in front of them, and they don't have a difficulty with another added complication like Brexit. So I think it's extremely positive and extremely welcome for both business communities in the United Kingdom and in Morocco.
Est-ce que vous pensez, Stéphane Or, que le nombre d'entreprises britanniques enregistrées à la Chambre britannique va être plus épais dans les prochaines années? Est-ce que vous pensez en fait que grâce à cet accord d'association, il y aura plus d'intérêt des entreprises britanniques pour le Maroc?
Do you think there will be more interest of British companies to Morocco in the years to come?
The short answer is yes. I still can't believe the exchange is quite so low as it is, given the long relationship between the United Kingdom and Morocco. We've been working hard at the Chamber to try and create a strategy where we can increase the amount of working together. So we're working extremely closely with the ambassador and with the DIT, with Daniel as well, to see what is it we can do to increase the activity. I know it will increase. It's just logical. Everybody that is in business will see the opportunities that exist between the two countries. And so it was mentioned before about barriers of entry, and so we're doing quite a lot of work to try and understand what are not just the opportunities, but what are the barriers. It's not just a barrier of language, but there is a fear that exists, obviously, between the two countries in terms of companies in the United Kingdom coming to Morocco. It's a different language, it's a different, let's say, legal bureaucratic system to overcome. It's a different continent for sure. So it's always the fear of the unknown. So what we have to do and what we will do in the chamber, working in conjunction with the embassy and with DIT, etc., is to slowly but surely decrease that level of fear and have people more and more open to explore the opportunities in Morocco, and also for the Moroccan business community to explore those opportunities in the United Kingdom. But I'm super convinced that the level of activity between the two will go up, and it will go up exponentially. Brexit has brought a huge opportunity for that exploration, both from the UK side, I think more, and also from the Morocco side. The pandemic that we're living through brings a reality of kind of a very low base of activity in many sectors, and a lot of time to reflect and think for people in a time where, let's say, activity becomes low. People have the opportunity to sit back and think about what would their next best move be, what would their long-term strategy now be. And I think as a result of that time to think, Morocco will definitely be high on the list of places to come and see and look at. And I think also from the Moroccan side, where the activity is equally low, to think about where they would like to go next to explore those opportunities too. The agreement that we've talked about tonight paves the way to ensure that that continuity exists. It also kind of takes it out of the European context, which it might be the same agreement and the same deal, but it has something that's new about it. So when there's something different or new, even though it's the same, people will tend to want to explore the detail of that, where maybe they didn't do that before as much detail, because they've seen it all as the European kind of view. So I think it'll bring the UK, it'll show the UK as being more separate from Europe, and therefore I think that will naturally bring more interest to the business community as a whole.
Nous parlions il y a quelques instants avec Daniel Caté, Stéphane Or, de ce Green Deal, de ce plan européen au niveau de la décarbonation. C'est vrai qu'au niveau des métiers mondiaux ici au Maroc, on va accélérer la transition environnementale, même au niveau mondial, puisque je faisais mention de Airbus qui a annoncé son avion à hydrogène d'ici 2035. Quid des entreprises britanniques dans l'automobile, dans les transports, dans l'aéronautique? Est-ce que des mutations sont à venir? Et ces mutations-là, est-ce qu'elles peuvent être en collaboration avec le Maroc à l'avenir, selon vous?
So we were talking about the Green Deal. At the global business level, we are accelerating the environmental transition. Airbus has announced an hydrogen aircraft project for 2035. What about British companies in the automotive and aerospace industry? Future change and collaboration with Morocco, according to you?
I had opportunity in the last few weeks to visit Massen, which is a huge organization in Morocco, which is looking at the environmental renewable energy sector and the huge progress that they have made. I mean, Morocco needs to be congratulated on the progress they have made with respect to renewable energy, both in solar and hydro as well, and then in some cases in hydrogen. In the UK, even though I know as a ex-resident of the UK, in terms of living in Belfast, that the sun doesn't shine as much in the UK as Morocco, but they have made huge strides as well technologically in renewable energy, etc. Yes, the Airbus have announced 2035, which involves a first flight. I mean, I work in the aerospace sector. First flights as early as 2025 with respect to hydrogen. But I think the key here is, and it's something that I'm very personally passionate about, and we talk about the trade and the trade between the two countries. I mean, I think the UK can look at Morocco as a potential market, and Morocco looks at the UK as a potential market. But my passion, and I think renewable energy will bring this opportunity as in one of the sectors which is most prominent, is the fact that there is the possibility and the huge potential for Morocco and the UK to work together, let's say in the sector of renewable energy, to create something which doesn't address just the UK and Moroccan market, but create partnerships in business which can then launch themselves into the global market as partners, because as the ambassador said at the start, there's huge complementary areas within the two countries in terms of business. UK has certain expertise in certain areas. Morocco has certain expertise in certain areas. And when you bring those two together, you can create a partnership and a force that competes on the world stage. I have experience of this myself in what I do in the aerospace industry, where we combine a UK and a Moroccan competency and capability together, and we launched that into competition on a global market, and we won, and we had big success. So I think for all of the people tonight and for the go forward as well, this is not just about import export between Morocco and the UK. This is about finding the areas that are complementary to each other, finding how we can work closer and closer together, whatever the sector may be, and creating partnerships that not only increase the import-export and the exchange between the two countries, but allow the two countries to form partnerships that allow them to explore a world market, which is huge, which is absolutely huge. And this is my personal passion. I'm all for the exchange and the increasing business. The more we work together, the more we exchange together, the more we get to know each other, the more the fear goes down, the more we can do this. And this, believe me, is a winning combination that it just has to be grasped. So the scenario of Brexit brings it forward. Okay, for me, it accentuates the opportunity. And now what our role is to try and bring those two forces together, and it is a 1 + 1 = 3. This is a time when 1 + 1 can equal 3, and this is what we have to do. And I'm super passionate about it, and I'm very open to help anyone in any time in any sector create those relationships that can project the United Kingdom and Morocco together onto the world stage.
Merci beaucoup Stéphane. Alors vous restez avec nous parce qu'il y a beaucoup de questions et dans quelques instants on va aborder toutes ces questions posées par les participants. N'hésitez pas à nous contacter bien évidemment. On va donner la parole à Paul Menard que l'on retrouve. Bonsoir, good evening Paul Menard. Est-ce que vous nous entendez? Yes.
Paul, do you hear us? Paul?
Paul Menard? Paul Menard, que je rappelle, est conseiller principal en politique commerciale au sein du FID, donc le département pour le développement international. On va l'interroger sur bien, les dessous de cet accord, les perspectives d'avenir. Paul Menard, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Est-ce que votre son est activé? Non. Bon, ben alors on va peut-être passer aux questions des participants avec vous, Daniel Caté et Stéphane Or, et puis on retrouvera Paul Menard dans quelques minutes. Il y avait une question d'Anne Caté alors je vais la retrouver, de Mohamed qui se pose la question, quels sont les principaux domaines de coopération entre le Maroc et le Royaume-Uni qui sont susceptibles de se développer dans l'après-Brexit et quel sera l'impact de cette triangulation peut-être qui va se jouer entre le Maroc, l'Afrique et le Royaume-Uni.
So what are the main areas of cooperation between Morocco and UK likely to be developed in post-Brexit, and what will be the impact of the Morocco-Africa-UK triangulation?
Thanks very much. Shall I have a go at that question, which is a very good question. I think the first thing to say is the areas of cooperation pre-Brexit and post-Brexit won't necessarily change. So in terms of trade, there'll be areas which we think the UK and Moroccan economies and businesses can really complement each other. Stephen gave a great example of how the UK and Morocco can work together in a specific sector, and I think we'll be absolutely looking to do more of that, and to repeat some of the areas which we think there is value to be had, if you like. Renewable energy, education, a big thing. I would echo what the ambassador was saying about the demand for English language education that we're seeing here in Morocco, and we're really keen to try and supply that demand. Financial and professional services has always been an area that the UK has expertise in, and so we're keen to try and work together more in that. And then we can't not keep coming back to renewables and renewable energy, because it's a real priority for a lot of the world, and it's a real priority for the UK and Morocco, and I think there are many opportunities to be had for cooperation in that space. And just to address the second part of that question, Morocco would like to be, in many ways already is, a gateway to Africa, and we very much see Morocco as that as well. So where there are opportunities for UK companies to either use Morocco as a base for trading with the rest of Africa, or whether there's opportunities for UK companies to work together in joint ventures or other forms of cooperation in Morocco, but also in Africa more widely, then that's something we're absolutely keen to support.
On a une question également de Yousra. On parlait justement de transition énergétique. On en a parlé avec Monsieur l'ambassadeur, on en a parlé récemment avec Stéphane. Alors, est-ce que vous pensez, nous demande Yousra, est-ce que vous pensez que le Brexit va stimuler et augmenter les investissements dans le domaine du secteur énergétique marocain, Daniel Katé?
So do you think that post-Brexit will stimulate the investment and development in the energy sector?
Yes. I think it will stimulate and help, but I think that desire was already there. But I think there's plenty of scope to increase investment in that area, and precisely because what I was saying a bit earlier, I think the UK and Morocco are global leaders in this field, and Morocco hosted the UN climate change conference a few years ago. The UK is hosting it this year, and we are keen to learn from Morocco's experience of hosting it, bring that experience into our own hosting COP26 next year in Glasgow in Scotland. But as Stephen said, and I can confirm, there is a lot less sun in the UK than there is in Morocco, and precisely because of that, Morocco has developed such great expertise in solar and in other forms of renewable energy, and there are definitely ways in which I know that the UK can work with Morocco on that, whether it's bringing in specific technical or digital expertise to bear in this area, or in other ways. I know it's only going to increase, and I very much see my role working closely with the British Chamber as supporting that increase in cooperation in this area.
Stéphane, une réaction sur cette question par rapport à la question des investissements dans le secteur énergétique?
Yes, I can. Je comprends le français, so it's okay. Yes, it's amazing. I have probably in the last 4 weeks learned more about renewable energy than I have in the last 4 years. Shame on me, but it's the truth. And what I've learned is this, that for renewable energy, there is no one solution, one single solution that fits all needs. Okay, so it's not I can be solar, or I can be wind. You know, solar's good until it comes nighttime, and then the issue about solar energy is the battery and the storage, and that technology has not advanced as quickly as everything else. So here we go. So Morocco has become extremely expert in solar energy and how they do that. I hear that the COP26 will be in Scotland, where the sun really doesn't shine that much. So, however, it's very windy, so there's a lot of offshore wind technology going on, and these energies need to be. It all needs to be complementary. Okay, and I've learned that if you have only solar, it's not a 100% solution. If you have only wind, it's the same. So for sure, the UK and Morocco have developed renewable energy technologies, which again, as the ambassador said at the start, are quite complementary. Okay, yes. So solar on one hand, wind on the other hand, hydrogen coming in that we hear a lot about. All of this combined. So for me, it's inevitable that the UK and Morocco will work together closely on renewable energy and having complete solutions. And these are complete solutions that will eventually go into the global market. This energy is not something that's created in one country and stays there. What I've learned in the last 4 weeks as well is there are already a lot of activities on creating global grids and having joint venture where, you know, if the sun's shining here during the day, it's not shining somewhere at night, but vice versa. So where you can share energy, export, import energy, that is becoming more and more. So the global scene for energy, as we always say, the world is shrinking rapidly, and global energy is the same. So I'm convinced that the complementary technology expertise that exists between the two will only but promote collaboration and joint venture and partnerships that will serve both markets and will serve a bigger market beyond that. So it's something that, as I say, I've learned a lot about in the last 4 weeks, and I'm completely open to learn more about it. I love it. It's like a new toy for me in terms of how that can work, because it stimulates so much. Having green energy, and we talk about trade, you know, trade between the two countries is good, but how do you get your product from one country to the other? It has to be done through logistics, and we had a webinar on logistics and all of that only a few weeks ago. So if I have to take my product, which I do today in an aerospace environment, and ship it on a truck to the United Kingdom, right now that's not a globally friendly solution on a truck. However, if it was a hydrogen truck, if it was something that was green power, let's say, then that becomes so much more important. The tariffs that will come through not having that kind of energy and support and that kind of green footprint will cause that to happen. So now is the time. Now is the time to work together to create those solutions.
Alors, jamais deux sans trois. On va réessayer d'avoir Paul Mellard avec nous. Paul Mellard, je rappelle, qui est le conseiller principal en politique commerciale du DFID, pardon. Paul Mellard, est-ce que vous m'entendez ou pas?
I think Paul is having technical difficulties that are insurmountable, so we will have to leave him just to listen to us, but we can try and take some of the questions.
No problem. Alors, je vais poser les questions que je devais poser donc à Paul Mellard, à vous, Daniel Caté. Bon, d'abord, on peut se poser la question, comment l'accord d'association il peut protéger, selon vous, les entreprises britanniques ici au Maroc?
So how can the association agreement protect the British companies in Morocco?
Thanks. I think what I'd say, and if I answer these incorrectly, Paul will correct me after this, and we'll get back to you. But I think what I'd say, this agreement isn't necessarily about protecting British companies. It's about helping and supporting British companies, but it also works the other way. So we would hope and expect Moroccan companies who want to export to the UK or invest in the United Kingdom to benefit from this agreement and from the free trade and tariffs and quotas that the agreement brings. So it's about less about protection and more about growing and helping and being a platform for growth in trade between the UK and Morocco more widely.
Qu'est-ce que ça va changer? Qu'est-ce qui va changer en matière d'inspection et de certification des importations et des exportations de produits à travers cet accord? Est-ce qu'il y aura un secteur qui sera plus impacté qu'un autre, selon vous?
Is there any impact that will be on some sector more than the others?
I think I'd sort of just have to repeat what I said a bit earlier, which was the association agreement is not sector specific. So as I said, we very much wanted to benefit any and all sectors. That said, and I won't go into detail here, mainly because it's not all in my head, but there will be certain areas and certain sectors, agriculture, for example. I know there are specific quotas on the number of tomatoes that Morocco can export to the UK, for example. There will be certain areas where there are existing measures that will have a greater impact than others, but that stuff we'll continue to be looking at with our Moroccan partners, and it's, as I said, it's my sincere hope that any sector or any business that wants to trade in Morocco can benefit from this agreement.
Daniel Caté, est-ce qu'on peut s'attendre, selon vous, à des modifications de cet accord d'association dès l'année prochaine, dès 2021, et quels pourraient être, selon vous, les points justement à revoir dans cet accord d'association?
So can we expect any change to this agreement in 2021, and what are, in your view, the points that need to be reviewed in this agreement?
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't, if I'm honest, I wouldn't expect any quick changes overnight. I think our focus right at the beginning will be ensuring that switching from being inside the European Union to being outside the European Union and implementing this UK-Morocco Association Agreement runs smoothly, because there will be teething issues, let's call them, that we will want to address, and we're working now already and very closely with our Moroccan partners on addressing those to ensure that certainty and that continuity remains, and that from the 31st of December this year to the 1st of January next year, the transition is as smooth as it can be. But I think what I would say as well is that this is where we really want to engage with businesses, engage with BritCham and other business organisations on what actually you think needs to change, if anything. And so we'll want to be talking to businesses regularly, both here and here in Morocco and back in the UK, on what is working for them, what they think could work better, and also what isn't working, and then look to address those in the coming months and years.
Stéphane, vous voulez réagir à cette question? Selon vous, il y aura des modifications de cet accord peut-être dès l'année prochaine, ou c'est trop tôt pour se prononcer?
Yeah, I'm not I mean, I leave the expertise to Dan, obviously. I think he's right. I mean, let's get started. Let's get used to the new reality of one for Brexit. So it's a huge thing in the UK. So there's been and I really can't thank everyone enough for the work that has been done to have the agreement that we have in place ready to go on the 1st of January, which is really quite amazing. the two words fast track seem to go together quite well these days. We want to fast track vaccine, we want to fast track this, fast track that. We have essentially a fast track agreement, which normally would have taken, I guess, Dan, would have taken years and maybe even longer. It's ready, it's done, it's ready to go. So I think let's get started. Let's everyone get used to it. Let's spend our time making sure everyone is aware that it exists. Let's explain as much in detail as to how it works, and then let's start doing it. And we will follow a very business kind of orientated plan, do, check, act. It's in place. Let's start using it. Let's get the feedback. Let's find out where there are possible areas for improvement, and then let's get those improvements done. Hopefully, Dan, I will push for the same fast track when improvements are obviously needed to be made, that the same fast track exists. But I believe there's a sentiment between the two countries to make that happen. So I don't think at the minute it's about talking about potential changes. I think it's talking about let's make it work as it is. Let's start using it, and then let's discover what can be improved.
Alors, on a encore beaucoup de questions. Je vais vous les poser, Daniel Caté, et puis également Stéphane. Alors, d'abord, une question de les financiers. C'est vrai qu'on a abordé tout à l'heure entre le Maroc et le Royaume Uni, entre Casablanca et la place de Londres, côté financier, depuis 2014. Question de Sonia qui nous pose cette question. Est-il possible d'avoir une bourse unie basée à Casablanca et Londres? Daniel Caté?
Is there a possibility to have a stock exchange between Morocco and UK? And a united stock market with a platform based in Casablanca and London, for example?
I'm afraid the short answer is I don't know, but it's something we can certainly look into. But again, what I can say is we think it's great, and we want to do more of when the London Stock Exchange, for example, cooperates with the Casablanca Stock Exchange. And we saw just a couple of weeks ago the government of Morocco release a Euro bond in London and Luxembourg, I think of over €1 billion. So that is great stuff, and just shows the level of cooperation that we can achieve. Because we, at the end of the day, we should recognise we have the city of London, which is one of the world's greatest financial centres, and we have Casablanca as well, which is also one of the greatest financial centres. So and financial services, professional services was one of the areas I mentioned where we think we can work together well. So we will continue to do that, and stock exchanges, talking to stock exchanges will be part of that. Whether that will lead to a joint stock exchange, I don't know, but let's see.
Alors, tout à l'heure, nous avons abordé la question des technologies d'éducation. Monsieur l'ambassadeur en parlait, Monsieur Simon Martin. C'est vrai qu'on a consacré également un webinaire sur cette question-là, et tout récemment au sein de la Britannique. On a une question de Adil qui nous dit est-ce qu'il va y avoir des changements en la matière, où en est l'accord entre les deux pays en ce qui concerne le système éducatif? Qu'en est-il du e-learning? Est-ce qu'il y a des possibilités de partenariat, d'échange à l'avenir? Daniel Caté.
So where are we with the two countries concerning the education system? What about the e-learning?
I didn't quite catch all the question, but I heard. Maybe you can repeat it, Karim. Sorry, just one.
Yeah. So, what are we with the agreement between the two countries concerning the education system, and what about the e-learning?
Yeah, sure. So, we had a pre-existing education agreement between the UK and Morocco, which essentially allows for what we call British schools to be set up and run here in Morocco. And that means schools teaching in English and also using the British curriculum. As I said, we've seen massive demand for English language education and for British curriculum education, and we're really pleased to try and supply some of that demand. And on digital, I think education technology and e-learning, online learning, I think you know, unfortunately, in a way, the whole world has had to get very good at e-learning in recent times due to COVID and due to many schools being closed. And I'm really pleased that the British Council, for example, who we work closely with here, have been able to open up their online platforms for students and children in Morocco to access, which I think and I hope has helped with all that. But e-learning and education technology, as the ambassador mentioned, is definitely a priority area for us, and one where I think we can work well together with Morocco.
Une autre question, alors cette fois-ci, ça concerne l'héritage français du Maroc. Question intéressante qui nous est posée par... alors attendez, je vais essayer de trouver son prénom.
Okay, so Landry, I think we have Paul now. He will speak now, I think.
Ok, Paul Menard est avec nous.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we are hearing you.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so I really apologize. I heard everything until I was due to come in, and then the internet I hear in Cairo currently isn't as good as the internet in Morocco, so you're definitely one step ahead there. Anyway, just let me introduce myself. Paul Mallard. I'm Senior Regional Trade Policy Advisor covering North Africa and the Middle East. And my responsibility is to support Dan and the Ambassador, plus 5 other posts within the region to transition the agreements, and also to assist with the process of identifying and overcoming Maroc A barriers. We've got a person at post in Morocco, Salwa, who's supporting you to do that. And I think many of you will probably met Salwa by now. But I just want to, look, much has been said, so I don't want to speak too much, but I'm supposed to be the techie guy, but the first thing I'm going to say on the techie side is, if you've got any technical questions that I don't know the answer to, we're just going to write them down, because I know this is complicated. But just before getting to that point of complication, just 3 or 4 very sort of quick points. The starting point, and just answering the questions that were posed to me, is will you be protected to the new agreement? Well, you are at the moment and up to the 31st of December, because everything is protected in terms of third country trade through the withdrawal agreement. The withdrawal agreement means that we still operate through the EU agreement until the end of the year. So what happens at the end of the year? Well, the good news is, and this is the good news for Morocco, and 1 or 2 people mentioned it, is that we have got the continuity agreement for Morocco. This has been negotiated, it has been signed. Dan and I and a number of other people, we've got to do some paperwork to make sure that what is now going to be a new legally binding international treaty will be available to come into force on the 1st of January. But the good news here is that even if Dan and I failed to do all that paperwork, we have ability to apply this provisionally until we complete all of that paperwork. So you're in a fortunate position in Morocco being able to go ahead and implement the agreement. So we've got that transition process. What does it cover? Well, actually, what I would actually do is encourage everybody just to go onto gov.uk. Type in Morocco UK transition agreement. You actually see the agreement. And what is the agreement is actually quite short. And it's what's called a short form agreement. What we've done is taken the EU document, which is very nice and thick, and we've got a very nice thin UK document, which is on top. And basically, that document covers everything which is in the EU agreement. I mean, the cheeky way up of this is we've just deleted EU and we've put UK, and we've hired some very expensive lawyers to help us to do that. But the treaty sort of covers 3 or 4 key points. One is it guarantees this preferential access, that you don't apply duties, you don't apply tariffs trade between Morocco and Tunisia. And that is really quite a fundamental point. And that is covered through something which is called rules of origin. These are these set of rules which govern preferential trade. And I come back to this point on rules of origin in a second. The second one is that there are still some areas where we've got protected trade. And this is, and Simon mentioned this, is around quotas for agricultural goods. These were negotiated. We have to operate within a framework which is set by us by the WTO, where we set those quotas to be in addition to the EU quotas, and they're 13.62%. And during the negotiation with the Moroccans, for 1 or 2 goods, tomatoes was one, that quota was increased a little bit. And I mentioned quotas because that was one of the really sort of key issues which was discussed during the negotiations. So those were sort of the key features which are there within the agreement. The next sort of question is, well, what are we going to do with this agreement? And a lot has been said about that already. And what can we do to make changes to it? Now, Simon's alluded to the strategic dialogue, and we can use that as a basis to continue conversations going forward. But the strategic dialogue, well, the agreement provides now a legal basis for us to be able to update the agreement as and when we want to do so with Moroccan partners. And so that provides a very strong foundation to be able to take the trade agenda forward, both in terms of further liberalisation and over time to add new chapters. Because whilst the present treaty actually sort of alludes to goods, services, investment, procurement, etc., it's basically a goods agreement. It's quite a basic trade agreement at the moment, and there's lots and lots of extra things that can be added in the way the trade agreements for many Asian countries operate at the moment. And so that could be an escalation that we want to aspire to over a number of years. So that sort of gives us a legal basis to be able to take that bilateral sort of dialogue process forward. But having said that, there are a number of issues, and again, most of these have been alluded to already, that we just need to manage as part of the transition process. So we have the agreement there. That's the good news. But there are still one or two things that we still need to sort of make sure that fall into place to make sure that everything can operate as smoothly as it previously. One of those areas is around customs procedures, and also procedures around export. So as we leave the EU, then we won't have access to the customs and the SPS procedures, which we operate on through the EU at the moment. And so therefore the UK has to set up its new systems to enable us to continue with our trading. Sort of being a little bit techy here, there's sort of the Euro 1 form that we use at the moment, which is sort of underpins all. That will continue, but it will operate outside the EU system. But we will continue to be able to use that Euro 1 form as we go forward. Now, the other thing is a little bit more complicated there, because I mentioned this rules of origin point, which I alluded to sort of earlier, is the rules which sort of govern trade. And sort of how those rules will be taken forward, in some senses, are governed by what the outcome of the UK-EU agreement will be. So we have to sort of wait for that to be finalised to know exactly how these rules will manifest themselves. But as soon as they are, then we hope to be in a position to be able to communicate them to you. And then the third area, which is again a little bit touchy, is that I mentioned these quotas earlier. Now, for some goods, the quotas are there, you can read them in the document. But when the agreement comes into force on the 1st of January, then it's going to come mid-season for some goods. So we're going to actually then be able to say, look, if you've got, I don't know, 100 tons of product X, then if we've got 3 months of the growing season, then how much of that will be left going forward. So there's sort of some of the issues that we still need to sort of talk through and to resolve. But they're just sort of some of the key sort of headline things that we're working on. And what I'm really, really keen to do, and I'm going to land down in a lot of trouble here now, is to really hear just from you. I mean, if you're actually genuinely running into problems and say, look, we're saying all the nice words, we're saying the nice attitudes, but we're having problems, then we do need to hear from you. And very much part of our role is to be able to send those messages back to London so that we can find ways and solutions to be able to resolve them. And at a very sort of like very detailed level. So let me just sort of stop there, and I hope that you heard that and we can continue the conversation.
Paul Menard, on a deux questions pour vous. D'abord une question qui nous vient de Khalid qui se pose cette question. Est-ce qu'il existe ou est-ce qu'il a déjà existé une chambre de compensation clearing house entre l'Angleterre et le Maroc?
So Paul, there is a question for you that say, is there or does it already exist a clearing house between UK and Morocco?
Yeah, that's a good question. To which I don't know the answer. I think it's that. I mean, I think the way I would answer that actually, you've got to talk to your clearing agent. Okay, so you guys who are moving goods across borders at the moment, you have your clearing agents. They're the ones who you're going to need to seek advice on in the first place. And I think they're the people we need to talk to, and then come back to us if they're running into problems getting goods through ports and through airports.
On a une question de Badr également, Paul Menard, pour vous. Badr qui s'intéresse notamment à l'agriculture, au secteur de l'agriculture et de l'agroalimentaire, et qui se demande qu'est-ce qui va changer selon vous en matière d'inspection et de certification des exportations alimentaires.
Another question for you, Paul. So, what will change in food import and export inspection and certification?
Well, there shouldn't be any change. I mean, because this is a continuity agreement. So the forms. So I mentioned on the customs side, but I mean, as we know, there are many SPS forms. So on the inspection side, we're not anticipating any changes necessarily in the forms. It's just been having access to the EU system. And that's the key issue. So we're expecting continuity, but if through your agents you're running into problems, then that's what we need to hear from you. Because there's, this is, I mean, as many of you know, I mean, getting this across borders is a complex process. If you feel that you're going to be running into problems, then we need to understand that problem so that we can communicate that problem back to London.
Et une dernière question de Badr, toujours, qui s'intéresse au sorry.
Yeah, you can go on, Paul, if you want.
Une question de
that was the end of my answer.
Okay, Landry, for you.
Yes. Une question de Badr, toujours, qui s'intéresse aux chaînes logistiques et qui se pose la question comment seront, selon vous, Paul Mellard, réorganiser les chaînes logistiques entre le Maroc et la Grande-Bretagne avec cet accord d'association?
Okay, so Paul, another question for you. How will the logistic chains between Morocco and UK will be reorganized?
Well, the logistics chain is the logistic chain. We have the trade agreement, but the trade agreement is just a trade agreement. I mean, and everything you do at the moment should principle continue as is. So the logistical chain you have in terms of transportation, being able to get goods through ports, etc. I mean, the logistics of that should remain changed. And so this again, at the point I come back to is if you feel that there's going to be logistical challenge, either caused through the bilateral agreement or because of third-party effects, then again we're going to need to hear those issues from you. I mean, sorry for keep repeating this, but that ostensibly I think is the way that we're going to have to operate and take things forward. We need to hear specific problems from companies to be able to address those specific problems.
Alors, on a vu qu'il y avait beaucoup d'avantages, beaucoup d'opportunités à saisir avec cet accord d'association, peut-être un accord de libre-échange, peut-être des modifications en 2021. Je voudrais conclure avec une question assez philosophique qui est posée par Halima qui se pose la question suivante. Alors, je vais peut-être vous la poser à vous, Daniel Caté, puis ensuite faire réagir Stéphane Or. Comment dépasser le lourd héritage français au Maroc et cette méconnaissance culturelle, finalement, entre le Royaume-Uni et le Maroc? Daniel Caté.
Yeah, can you rephrase it, Landry, please?
Oui, une question sur le lourd héritage français au Maroc. Comment dépasser ce lourd héritage et comment améliorer la connaissance culturelle entre le Royaume-Uni et le Maroc? C'est un peu une question philosophique qui peut se poser aujourd'hui. On rappelle que ça fait partie des prérogatives également de l'ambassadeur et du consul.
Yeah, so for Dan, according to historical to the history between Morocco and France, how we can change this and have a better view and approach between Morocco and UK.
Thanks very much for that good question, and I should be careful of how I answer this because I might cause a diplomatic incident between the UK and France. But no, in all seriousness, I don't think it's about trying to be better than France, and we should absolutely recognise the history that Morocco has and the history that France has in Morocco, just like the UK has its own history in other countries. What's important for us now is how we can bring UK companies into Morocco in terms of exports, in terms of investment, but also in terms of partnerships and joint ventures, both here in Morocco, but also in other countries. And yes, I sort of, to recognise the premise of the question a bit, I think there are areas in Africa, for example, Francophone Africa, for example, which have traditionally been more French or more other European countries that of course the UK would like to trade with, but it's and of course in business you have competitors and such like, but really it's less about being better than the French, so to speak, but more about how we can use this agreement to enhance trade and investment between the UK and Morocco, and that might be in competition with French. I keep saying French because that was the country in the question, but there are other countries, of course. But it might be in cooperation with French. There are many examples where UK and French companies work extremely well together in Morocco and elsewhere. So for us, it's about growing those trade links and cooperating with Morocco and others.
Une question intéressante de Kamal. Alors, je vais la poser à Paul Menard et à Stéphane Or. Kamal qui se pose la question, est-ce qu'avec cet accord d'association peut s'ouvrir une nouvelle page économique entre les deux pays, et est-ce que l'on peut rêver de grands projets?
So another question for Paul and Stephen. So with this new agreement, will it be a new page that will be open between the two countries, and will we be able to dream widely with this agreement?
I think I'll answer the question from my perspective. We can always dream. I know I dream quite a bit. I think there is the opportunity to launch some really large projects between the two countries. We talked about renewable energy a lot, and that brings forward some quite large potential for projects. We talked about education. I know the previous question touched on culture and the influence of France and Morocco, etc., etc. But I think the more we work together, the tourism from the UK was certainly going up, and it's perceived that that will go up more. So the more that we exchange with each other, the more we understand each other. As a British person living in Morocco, I appreciate the differences in culture, but they're not. One is not exclusive to the other. So I take Dan's point. We don't want any diplomatic faux pas, let's say. So it's. I think it brings forward huge opportunity, and yeah, of course, we need to dream. We need to dream about what is possible, what is the most possible between the two countries, and then make that happen.
So Paul, can you answer this question? Paul?
I didn't hear the question.
So according to this agreement, do you think we can dream widely to have a better exchange and better opportunities between the two countries?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Now, this is the whole purpose of it. As we were alluding to earlier, I mean, there's a clear legal structure within the agreement to enable us to update to the Agreement Council. There will be an annual meeting with ministers for us to work together during the year to identify ways that we can make the agreement stronger. And there are ways which we can do that in terms of sort of making sure that from the Moroccan side we're making better use of the preferential acts and preferential sort of opportunities which the agreement holds. There's opportunities for us to be able to help identify some of the market access barriers, what we can do to be able to address where they come there, and then to use the legal mechanisms that we have to agree to be able to sort of address these kind of issues. That's within the confines contributions to the agreement. But I think the key point I just want to make is the agreement is ambiguous. I mean, it's just basically an agreement of the trade at the moment. So we need to understand, you know, that is the framework that we're operating. You know, we have other agreements, like the bilateral investment, which again covers the trade, so the investment between us. So these agreements are there, but they're not the end of the end already. I mean, they just provide a framework for conversation going forward. And as I mentioned earlier, what we've got to work on over the next few months is to make sure that the transition process operates smoothly for as many people as we can. I mean, that's the key thing we've got to focus on.
Merci beaucoup, Paul Mellard. Merci beaucoup, Daniel Caté. Je vais terminer avec vous, Stéphane Or, pour le mot de clôture. On a beaucoup appris. On a vu qu'il y a des perspectives importantes entre le Maroc et la Grande-Bretagne, le Royaume-Uni dans les prochains mois, dans les prochaines années. J'ai envie de vous poser une toute dernière question pour vous permettre de conclure. Est-ce que vous comptez les jours avant le 1er janvier 2021?
No, I'm not counting the days. Normally we count the days till, well, culture, we talk about culture, we count the days to Christmas. Not so much here, but yeah, no, I'm not counting the days. I think every day is an opportunity to learn something and to see what opportunities exist. So I don't like to count the days. Every day to me is important. So I want to thank everybody for taking part tonight. Thank everybody that tuned into the webinar and listened, and everyone obviously who posed a question. And thank you very much. And we will be assured be continuing to work to make sure that this is the success that it needs to be. Thank you to everybody.
Merci Stéphane Or, président de la BRICHAM. Merci beaucoup Daniel Caté, consul britannique. Merci beaucoup Paul Mellard, conseiller principal en politique commerciale au sein du FID. À très bientôt pour un prochain webinaire. Bonne soirée à tous.